Our next guest is the Principal Secretary in the State Department for MSME Development, Susan Mang'eni. She's in the studio. Good morning, PS.
Morning, Eric.
Karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay.
Her name is Ndu Oko.
Ndu?
Oko.
Ndu is fine.
Ndu Oko.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Ndu Oko, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. PS. Karibu sana.
Karibu sana, PS. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Yes.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Hot seat?
Yes.
It's cold.
Very good. Very good.
Come on.
We like it that way.
Don't light fire now.
To welcome you to the show, I'm going to give you the day's proverb. It's a West African proverb. Listen to it. Tell us your own reading of it and interpretation. It says, salt cannot glorify or praise itself in the sauce. Salt cannot glorify or praise itself in the sauce. What's your understanding of it? What's your interpretation of this proverb?
Somebody else has to test.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so somebody else has to test it.
And?
Yeah, and what are you driving at?
What do you think the West African people of the Songhai were saying with this? What is the lesson to take from this?
The impact has to be seen.
By others.
By others.
That you cannot talk about how good you are, right? Or
but also, if you don't talk about it, how will they know?
By testing.
No, if you don't talk about it, how
will
I just
they know
came in
that
when
this
you
is
were
salt?
talking about the thousands of the Form 4 leavers who
Yes.
did not apply. And one of the issue there was some of them didn't even know. Yeah, they were not aware. So also, the information must be there.
Both sides of the sword.
Yep.
Yeah. Introduce us to the State Department for MSME Development. What's your mandate?
My mandate
Yes.
is to grow MSME. Yeah, to promote them, to promote their productivity, enable their competitiveness and profitability. So that they can significantly contribute to our economy by creating jobs and also generating revenue.
Why is MSME such a big deal to the government?
It is a big deal because that's the architecture of our economy anyway. Yeah, like any other economy in developing country is fully dependent on the economy, small businesses. You can see we are not industrialized economy, and therefore we have to depend on the small businesses, the input of our businessmen and women. Yeah.
Just so that we are clear, do Mamambogas qualify as MSME?
Oh yes, they are
And
MSME.
kinyozi and boda boda
Of course they are.
Na ule mtu anachoma mahindi.
I just used one. I just used a boda.
So, as long as
They
you're
are
in
MSME.
business,
Yeah.
you are in some level of either
You are
micro, small, medium, or then going into larger enterprise.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You are either at micro, depending, of course, with your day-to-day turnover, yeah, your capital base, and the nature of business you're doing, whether you've just created a job for yourself. And most of people, the source of employment is the small businesses. If does not employ someone else, at least for them, is creating a job for them. So, so all business people in Kenya that are in MSME ecosystem.
What are the challenges that many MSMEs in Kenya face? Like the main ones?
There are quite a number of barriers. But of course, the main ones being access to financing. And what makes that difficult, of course, is that majority, again, of our MSMEs are in the micro, which is the lowest level, and are not formalized. They're informal. Some of them are not registered, and they operate like in a lottery form of, operation. Today you get, tomorrow you don't get, and they're not served. They're not even banked. And if you are not served, nobody even, you don't have any business support. even capacity building. You are not even able to know opportunities which are existing, what you are talking about, So you're not kind of visible credit-wise. And also there is now the challenge of collateral, you see. And because if you look at the conventional collaterals that we have today in the credit market, talk about properties, assets, title deeds, this and that. And because these people are not visible, then they also do not have for challenges here and there, some of them which could be cultural, and because of the high poverty level, they don't have a dependable social capital network which can guarantee them for anything. Yet, that the majority, I would say the micro are almost around 70% of MSMEs in Kenya, and they do their small businesses that pushes them over. That makes them meet their daily needs, at least at subsistence level. I'm able to sell my mboga, put food on the table, those small things. But again, that cannot afford them the enhanced livelihood that you really want our Kenyan people to have. So the lack of collateral and makes it difficult for them to access credit in the market, and you cannot do business without having access to credit. The other bit, of course, as I talked about, is capacity building, and in the capacity building of even knowing what exists around you and how to exploit the opportunities, lacking necessary networks and linkages even to markets, becomes so difficult for them to grow and scale up their businesses. Other challenges, of course, that are there, of course, now become the social security issues. For example, these people have no social safety nets. You find those who are in urban areas, they are faced with issues of housing, rental issues each and every month. Again, also if they are sick, and sickness is the biggest driver to poverty, because if you're sick, that small stock that you have, you are likely to dispose it off. So you find these people really having a challenge. Those who are in the rural areas, accessing Medicare, makes them, come down. It's the biggest shock that they can ever have that pulls down the businesses. So there are a myriad of challenges that face them. But as we say, the key one is just being credit visible, so that as and anytime you need credit, you can be able to access it, so that you take charge of the opportunities that come across you.
Okay. So as having looked at the challenges and seen that from, a state point of view, from a government point of view,
yes,
what then is the desire for this sector? What has government seen that this is the way in which then it ought to be? How should this sector actually be playing out when we are looking at the way in which business is done in this country? How should it actually play out? What would you envision it to be?
Thank you so much. Ndu? You said
yes,
this, Ndu?
Yes.
Ndu or Ndu?
Ndu is fine. Yes.
Ndu is fine. Yeah. Okay. So I think first and foremost, this administration recognize the central role that MSMEs play in our economy. And we said the only way that we could grow our economy was when we stimulate the participation of MSME, especially those in the micro who are highly informal. Seeing how do we get to formalize them, how do we get to make them visible. And by doing that, then it meant that we have to really interrogate the environment as it is today, the credit access environment. And what we meet there is that, of course, those challenges that I've spoken about. So the first initiative, of course, that President Ruto did, and you remember last year during the campaign, he promised Kenyans that within 100 days of him being sworn in, he's going to launch a fund called the Hustler Fund. And the reason why this Hustler Fund was launched is so that to correct the market failure by giving access to easy and cheap credit to the people at the bottom of the economic pyramid who cannot raise collateral, and also helping to build a new collateral system which we are calling credit score. Because if you do not have assets, and like I've said, that population lacks also assets which they can depend on, which they can advance to access credit. So then Hustler Fund, what it has come is to give them a new collateral system. And so the first product that was launched, and we all know about it, and I'm happy, Eric, the other day we went in the studio and you confirmed, is the personal loan. So this personal loan, the first thing it has done for us is to first of all show us the population of the people in Kenya who are in need of credit. So we are trying now to create credit visibility among that population, because also if you do not know the how many people that you're supposed to intervene or to indulge, then it becomes so difficult to come up with the intervention that can really speak to their needs. So today, as we speak, we can say we have about close to 21 million Kenyans that are in need of day-to-day credit. Then just before that, I think when we had...
And you know this by those who applied for a loan?
Those who applied for the Hustler Fund loan. And out of those 21, close to 18 million have borrowed the loan. You see, there is one thing of applying, have really borrowed the loan. And out of those 18 million Kenyans that have actually borrowed the loan, we have about 7.2 million Kenyans who borrow on regularly basis, who have borrowed more than 5, 6, 7 times in the last 8 months that the first products was launched. What does that tell us? What that tells us, it gives us the scope of the Kenyans who are in need of the credit. And whereas when we were launching this product and people are saying, oh, Kenyans are not going to pay, that's not true. It just shows that Kenyans were lacking such kind of products in the market. And then secondly, the other market failure that was there was the exorbitant interest rates. So and you know the reason why we have such exorbitant interest rates in the credit market is because of the high risk nature that is attached to that segment of the population, especially the micro. Because again, if you don't have properties or assets that you can advance as a collateral, what then happens is that the credit market will try to make interest to be so high so that even if you are to default, at least they would have gotten something out of it. So the Hustler Fund again came to rectify that, correct that, and just to demonstrate to the private sector and existing credit market, including even government agencies, that is possible actually to serve these people at a single digit. So the personal loan is 80%. Then the other bit that this has done, these 7.2 million Kenyans who borrow every day, today we can say that now they have a positive credit score, that they can now even be graduated to the existing credit market. And I remember a month ago we had a conversation with one of the banks, and they were saying, by the way, we are now ready to graduate them to a product, because now they have built a securitized system in the manner in which they borrow every day, even if it's 500. And by the way, Eric, if you can be trusted in the credit market, if you can be trusted with 500, you can equally be trusted with 1 million shillings or with 10 million shillings. It's about the consumer behavior. So that's what we've done. But of important, what Hustler Fund again has done is to rehabilitate the majority of Kenyans who are in CRB. Remember, the first week during President Ruto's presidency, he had a conversation with the institutions that had listed negatively Kenyans, and close to almost 80 million Kenyans were in CRBs. And you know, once you CRB is like you have been sentenced to death, lifetime in imprisonment, because you can get money clear your loan or whatever, but it will take you some time to repair your credit. And we say we cannot have an economy where majority of Kenyans at that productive age, around 7 to 8 million are outside our economy. So we needed to bring back. And the beautiful thing again about this hustler fund, you say that the salt cannot taste itself. But what I'm just saying is that you see now, we sat down. The hustler fund is an initiative that has had huge input also from the private sector. And it's been riding on the infrastructure of the private sector, because the government's business is not to crowd out the private sector, but rather to facilitate the private sector. So we say, good, you've had this experience in digital lending. You've had this experience in scoring. Can we sit down and see how do we reach out to majority of these Kenyans now who are on the verge of being left out of the economy? And they said, fine. So we sat together, commercial banks, with telcos, and we worked out a baseline credit score. And I want to believe that in the coming days, we are at a point where we can now graduate these 7.2 million people back to the credit market, and that way we'll be now enlarging also the credit customer base of the existing financial institution
in the private sector.
Yes.
How many products are there in the hustler fund now? You started off with the personal loan.
Yes.
And then you have to expand these products as you went.
Yes. How
many do we have?
We actually, during the conceptualization of the fund, we had 4 products in mind. Of course, the first product was this personal loan, and like I've talked about why we had this personal loan. Also, even kind of to find out the visibility of the credit visibility in the country, which we now have. We have data. We can now speak from the data. So, and the Hustler Fund 1 is now creating a reference, because it's helping us to build our credit score and also create a reference where people can always consult it. So the second product is the group product, which we launched in June, during Madaraka Day, June 1st. And this product so far, we have been able, as of today morning, we have been able to lend out to 17,200 groups so far.
Okay.
What's a group?
A group, for the second product, a group can have a minimum of 10 members. And between 10 to 30 members, depending on how you want it to be. And the group is just an aggregation of the individuals. You aggregate them together who want to increase their bargaining power, either to access higher limits. Because in a group, you'll find people who have got a higher credit score, others have got a lower credit score, so that all those group dynamics and advantage that ones get. So in a group, you can be able to borrow from 20,000 to about 1 million. But the interesting thing about this product, in terms of the easy accessibility, is that you can create a group actually through your phone. Just also by dialing *254#, you create a group. You choose whether you need Hustler Fund group. And if you are just the same way you create the WhatsApp group, you add members. So there you invite members.
Right.
You dial and you invite members that you know. So you must be knowing. You must have made a predetermined decision that we 10 members or 15 members, we want to form the Hustler group. And then also, after you create that group, you will also get an advantage of getting your certificate, which can be downloadable. After that, you'll be prompted, you now have your certificate is ready. You can go online, because we have integrated the Hustler Fund platform to the MSEA. MSEA is Micro Small Enterprise Authority, which does registration of micro and small enterprises. So them they register groups and they register association. So then we have also put necessary controls in the groups, that every step you do, nobody can take advantage of you. And because of the Hustler Fund 1, the unique identifier is ID. And you know, one thing that we've done in this country was to integrate our IDs with our telephone numbers. So in the group, during group formation, as you invite members, you just put their numbers.
Yeah.
If you put their numbers, of course, the unique identifier is already. And that member will get a prompt message to that, requesting him to confirm whether
they want to join the group.
After they've joined the group, they will be scored. Again, we'll consult the Hustler Fund score, which is there now, which is going to become almost universal in Kenya. So we consult to see how much limit can you have as individual level. So it's aggregation of your limits that now will give you the group score.
Yeah.
So then the group score and the limit is multiplied by 3 because this is a group. It has an enhanced kind of limits. So let's say, Eric, if your limit has been giving you in Hustler Fund 1 and you're a good payer, borrower and payer, what happens is that if your limit was giving you 1,500 currently, in a group, the advantage you bring to that group is that now you'll be able to have a limit of about, because it's times 3, 4,500. And assuming you are 10 people who have got such, you now can be able to borrow up to 45. So then after that, the official, of course, will request for the loan. And the good thing with that, because we have to look at also the control, is that at least 2 other members will be randomly requested to confirm whether the group wants to borrow such amount. And once they give the okay, the money will be in your wallet. So you can now decide on how much do you want to give Eric, 10 or wherever, and you can either do individual projects or you can do one project as a group. The best thing with this is that you can access higher limits, even up to 1 million, and there is that element of guaranteeing each other. But then this is the product that we feel is going to be a game changer to economy, because it's very easy now to mobilize and purposely rally people around an idea, business idea. The government right now is focusing on certain key value chains, like in which we have identified as having high growth potential in terms of giving us jobs, creating jobs. You saw yesterday the screaming headline, in one of the daily, saying we have an employment pandemic. And I can tell you for sure, anybody who expects civil service to create right now a job is just a dream. The jobs are going to be created from the private sector and through such enterprises. So as we get to now, graduate people from the Hustler Fund 1 to group, and then also we hope in the next few months or so, we're also working on the enterprise loan, where now firms can borrow. If you have a company now, you
properly
can
registered companies
can
under
borrow,
the Companies Act,
or a business can borrow. You see, registered business can now borrow certain. Let's say at that point you can also borrow for LPO. You can borrow for what, and then later on, the fourth product will be on startup. To boost some of, we have very good ideas among our young people, especially innovative ideas. But most of the time they struggle to get people who can really invest in them, incubate them up to the point where they can go to the market. So we are going also to provide that.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and talk about this group product that the Hustler Fund is now rolling out and how that's going to work. So basically, I have been borrowing from the Hustler Fund since December last year. My limit. The last time I was with the PS on KTN Home and KTN News was on Shirika Day, the Cooperative Day, when we were
MSME Day. International MSME Day.
My limit then was 500 bob. My limit this morning is still 500 bob.
We review
Fund
every after 4 months.
December, January, February, March. You should have gotten some more money in March.
Surely.
No. It wasn't December. It was just in June.
But since December, my limit has been 500.
Even since the December, at least it should have been reviewed.
December, your limit has... maybe you don't borrow every time. How regular do you borrow?
Now, if I want to borrow more and it's only giving me 500,
I will tell you why
I go
that
to Shylock.
500 is going to help you in future.
Okay. So I have to keep borrowing and then
Yeah,
see
please.
it increases my credit score.
As we look at the challenges and then look at the Hustler Fund itself and say that we're trying to get people visible, getting people who are practicing in business around the country, how will you then know that people have progressed from one level to the next? How will you know this and then be able to harness that information to then say that we've at least moved, we're moving, we're getting somewhere? What would be indicators of this particular success?
Yeah, our aspiration is to be able to see the mobility from, let's say, micro to small and medium enterprises. But for us, let's begin by micro. How will we know that we have moved? One, if you look at the levels of formalities and informalities, because through the group, for example, the group product, that's part of formalization. Remember, I've talked about the element of registration and having certificates. So we can say now, if we sit down maybe in the next 1 month and try to assess how many groups have we registered in itself, we'll be able to tell how we are trying to move them. At least when they're visible, it's very easy now to understand closely what are their needs, so that now even what are their financial needs, what are the training needs, what are the gaps that exist in their business paths, so that then we can now start coming up with intervention or start looking for networks that can really support them. By putting together also a database that makes us also know who is where, who is in this sector, and how can they be reached, where are they. And I was just talking about, for example, the value chain concept that we are rolling out as a country, which we have flagged out the key sector of economy. And around those value chain, we have about 8 priority value chain. The first one being the leather value chain. And second one is dairy. The third one is edible oil crops. We're talking about rice production. We want to increase the production of rice. We're looking at at cotton, textile and apparel. We're looking at building and construction. What about talk about Bomayangu, affordable housing and so forth, opportunities around there. We're looking at tea in terms of value add. We're also looking at coffee. And finally, we're looking at blue economy, opportunities around blue economy. And we've gone also another step to kind of map out this country in terms of where do we have growth potential, high growth potential. For example, the leather value chain, you will tend to look at the Asal area, the northern part of this country, and all Asal areas. And now, in our data right now, which you're putting up through Hustler Fund, we are able to tell who is where. For example, today we can give you the county distribution in terms of how Hustler Fund is doing. So we've been able to create a data of identifying where these people are. So the next level is where we have a lot of works, as I will say.
So PS, that this information is based on then obviously who has borrowed.
Yes, who has borrowed.
Okay.
And who has borrowed or who has interacted. Remember, I've told you about 18 million people have borrowed, but about 21 million Kenyans have been reached out. And we have the data. Because if you have your phone number, we're able to tell where you come from. So again, what you're going to do is to create again, one of the things that the government did by having this State Department was to create some sort of a coordination platform to manage those coordination gaps that we had in this ecosystem. Truly speaking, for the last 60 years in this country, there are many actors who've been doing a lot of things in the space of MSME. You find people who have been running incubation programs, acceleration programs, development partners like World Bank, JZ, JICA. Everybody has been doing something. government has been doing something. You've seen, we've had even catalytic funds, what we call affirmative funds, like youth fund, Uwezo fund, you know, being there, KI being there, promoting industrialization and so forth. But the lack of coordination so that they can leverage on each other is what has made the impact to not to be felt, and also not to reach out to as many people as possible, because we've had this duplication. You find if it's training, everybody's doing training to an extent that the same limited scope of the population which they're reaching out get even confused, because you are walking from one training seminar to another, and wasting even the opportunity which would have settled down and run your business. So what we've done is that we are bringing that coordination in that sector. We've had stakeholders engagement. Just last month we had a development partners roundtable, also trying to bring them together and saying each one of them, of course, in working with us, we can be able to kind of leverage on our strength, on our niche, and also create opportunities for graduation, where these MSM, for example, if I'm doing incubation, after I've done incubation, what next?
Right.
What next after 1 year of incubating me? How do I get to be known so that I'm connected maybe for financing, and that has been lacking. How do we connect them to the market? So we created an ecosystem where we can speak to each other, all actors at different level of the value chain. So having that central data is going to help us to know who have we reached, what are the levels of their need, because they're different needs. Micro requires different needs, different financial needs, different training needs, different even markets. They require different markets, and even the organization. Somewhat at the micro, to access a sustainable market needs to be in some sort of a group. Because even today, if you get an order to supply certain, kilograms or whatever thing, and you are alone, you may not manage. You will fail the market.
So you need to aggregate.
So you need to aggregate. But as you move forward, as you move upwards to small, for example, and to medium, you find now those becomes farms and they have certain capabilities which can enable them. So we are saying again, all this thing of first of all, so we try to collapse the silo approach that has been existing in the ecosystem. And then two, also, we are also trying then to create an opportunity where we can graduate MSME and scale them up. And thirdly, the bit also we are trying to do is that these halfway interventions should stop.
So no brokers.
No, and also
middlemen.
No, not really. Even middlemen in any ecosystem also economically they're significant, but it has to be in a structured way where they do not exploit.
So they're not exploitative.
That's not exploitative. But the point to which I was saying is that we should also run away from generalization, or even thinking that this one so-called one shoe fits all. That's one. Because if you ask anybody previously, before he'll tell you, I deal with MSME, and you ask them which MSME. Which level of MSME? I finance them. Okay, so relax. Is it micro? Is it small? Is it medium? So a number of people say, I give loans to MSME. When they do not, they fail to appreciate that every segment or level
has its own needs.
Its own needs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask, so the group product, since June 1st, you've said you've lent out to 17,200 groups. And
117 million.
117 million shillings has been lent out. 7.2 million of individual borrowers have borrowed more than 5 times from the Hustler Fund.
Yes.
And 18 million at least have borrowed. Now,
maybe once repaid, or twice repaid, or thrice repaid. And
the issues of trust and government come in, and I've got to ask you now the corporate governance question. We have a board in place. You sit on the board.
Yes.
As established by the PFM Act regulations.
Yes.
Do we have an administrator of the fund?
Yes.
Who's the administrator?
The administrator of the fund is the acting CEO.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the board. The board of the fund will say administrates the fund, but because not all the board members can do that, they employ the CEO who administrates the fund.
So the board has recruited a CEO.
No, it's in the process of recruiting now a substantive CEO, because at the moment we have acting CEO, and the law provided, actually, our regulation provided that the cabinet secretary could appoint the acting CEO, and then of course once the board is in place, we'll go through the normal processes and procedures of recruiting the CEO and also establishing now the secretariat. And I think those normal processes are now, those processes are in place right now.
So how long do we give this fund for it to be fully institutionalized?
Well,
complete board in place, complete secretariat in place, with a substantive chief executive officer as an administrator, and staff who are competitively recruited to serve in this Hustler Fund alone, not seconded from other units.
Yeah, we the processes. You see, the recruitment processes in this country, and especially establishing an institution, there are certain processes that have to be followed. Because the first process is to develop an organizational structure, and after that it has to go through certain approvals, which I can tell you today that that's what is happening right now. It has to go through certain approval, public service, give it a go ahead and stuff. It's only after we go those approvals that we have to seek also approval of the treasury, because you cannot also recruit or advertise without the element of the cost and the budgetary being in place. But what I can let you know is that those processes are now underway. But I can also say, in absence, you see, the law does not also contemplate vacuum. So in absence of that, the law also has got certain institutional mechanism that can support, because that's where we exist as a state department, and that's where we exist as also as a ministry, to just make sure that we're able to operationalize the fund, and there are no such gaps. However, of course, I agree that if you have a secretariat, then it also becomes easier on our part, on my part as a PS, and also on the part of the CS. But so far, with the progress that we have made so far, you can also see that we have also been working, because the Kenya at the end of the day wants service.
Right.
Yeah, whether it comes through an already established institution, what they need to see is that they're being served, and we're doing all that. Yeah.
Looking at geography now in Kenya, obviously we know that the majority of the people are not in urban centers, are not in urban Kenya. Majority of the people who also then require these services are spread around the country.
Yes.
Who require to be visible, who require to be banked, who want to get in some kind of formal business. How will this truly encompass the geography of this problem, or geography of this issue, to make sure that we're not looking at the centers, as it were, of Nairobi, of Kisumu, of Mombasa, but that really is spread across the country?
The most interesting thing, my outcome of the last, our experience so far in the last 8 months, is that the mobile technology penetration has been of help. And if there is an equalizer that we have in our country, it's the mobile technology. That each and every homestead right now across the country has got at least a telephone phone. And that's why this fund to date, we are yet even to move it to the mobile, to what you can call the apps, where you basically just require only maybe the smartphones and such. And that's why so far the outcome so far is USSD code, meaning even if you have a feature phone, you can be able to access it. And the interesting is that if I give you the statistics today, most of the users, actually, those who have been able to access, are using the feature phone, the so-called Kabambe. So that one shows the penetration that this fund has had there. However, as we move to the group, because I just wanted to show you the statistics in terms of the phone usage so far. Yeah, so because you see this, I get timely updates every hour. So in terms of the type of phone that is used, interestingly, 54% is feature phone, and only 46% is smartphone. So what does that say? Most of the borrowers actually are also those ones who are using the feature phones. But again, now, how do we take that forward? How do we make this financing now help for them? How do we ensure that even through the feature phone or through the mobile technology, how do we harness that to make them access the markets? So this is where now we are going to the grassroots. And through these group products, from next week, we are rolling out outreach programs. Of course, also going to work in collaboration with the structures which are already there, the county government structures. And remember when I talked about the value chains, there's also this element of the CAIP, the County Aggregation Industrial Park. So we say we want to tie opportunities around those CAIPs, because each and every county has also looked at those priority value chains, and they have those ones flagged out, 1 or 2 that are going to prioritize. So when we go there, we work with the county government structures, the elected leaders, the members of assembly, and also the provincial administration, in terms of reaching out to the masses there, telling them, hey, look, if this county, for example, is prioritizing, let's say, cotton farming, we can enterprise cotton farming. So when you come together 10 people, probably you need fertilizer to put there. You can come together and be able to borrow a hustler fund and put it into cotton farming. We say, for example, after you farmed your cotton, you want to maybe engage in cottage industry, there is also opportunity here. So we start organizing you and rallying you with some sort of a purpose in terms of an idea, but also the readiness of the market. But the other thing that you're also doing is to how do we graduate? Because you see, for the group, you can go up to 1 million. What if for those people who want more than 1 million? Can they still capitalize on the credit score?
Yep.
Collateral, the new collateral system, and advance loans. Yesterday, I gave out the Youth Fund loan as we were marking the beginning of the International Youth Week. I presented close to 33.8 million shillings to a number of youth-owned enterprises from around Nairobi County. And what I told them is that now going forward, we are going to graduate hustler beneficiaries, like among those 7.2 million who have shown, who have positive credit score, to be able now, if they need higher credits more than 1 million, which they cannot get within a group, to borrow now from the Youth Fund. Now, Youth Fund does not have to go there and start recruiting. You just look at how many of the hustler fund who are in need of such amount, and now they borrow them. So we're going to graduate them. We have KIE, which also give loans for manufacturing, for example, up to 20 million. If we have good ideas, and if we know that we have now incubated good borrowers on hustler fund, they can easily graduate to
Kenya Industrial Estates,
and many other opportunities, private investors, you know. So it's going to be beneficial. So just that 500, Eric, that people may
can lead me to
it will open you up to massive opportunities, because it's building your credit score, which is the new thing.
The challenge, though, is that every time I borrow 500 bob, some 25 bob is going into some fund, some savings, and I don't have access to these savings or visibility into these savings. So how do you answer that? So that I grow my credit score, but basically it's just government keeping some 25 bob every time I'm going to the hustler fund.
You'll have access to your savings. Let me tell you, it was also imperative that we introduce and we promote a culture of savings in this country. Especially,
how do I access it?
Among us, that group. And before you access it, can I give you good news? That today it is at 1.979 billion.
1.79 billion shillings have been saved.
has been saved.
Has been saved.
And this
by
is the
borrowers
little savings
of the Hustler Fund.
of 50, the small savings that we have. And and of course, part of that saving, 70%, goes to build up your pension. Remember, that sector, they are not in formal employment, where some pension is built up for them for, so that you can retire with some sort of social security. So what is happening is that we had to build for them a pension scheme, and the pension scheme is good for them. And even in business, at some point you'll retire. It
So
will
all you're
come
saying
at
is
time.
over 700 million shillings has gone into pension.
A pension,
this
which
is-
at the moment, that money, you see, like a pension, how you invest in pension, how you handle pension, is heavily regulated through RBA.
Yeah.
So that one is being handled well. And this money, at the moment, you'll ask me, why is it being invested? Is in T-bonds,
In government securities.
in government securities. But as we work out now, we kind of crystallize a framework on how you can access. By the way, Eric, now if you are to access that saving, we want also to encourage you to invest in Boma Yangu. The other day I was having a conversation in PS for housing, and we agreed that these social houses, which they have, want to turn them into, drive it as hustler houses, so that we encourage also these people who will plug
you
that
save on
hustler
the Hustler
housing.
Fund.
They can now directly save to acquire those houses.
Spice up your life.
And you'll access it, and you can also invest it, and the government is matching up for you. When you save 2 shillings, they match out one up to about 3,000, so that you will have saved at least 9,000 per year.
Okay. PS, thank you very much for joining us today.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.